I also put 2 little dots of glue on the antenna. This, in hindsight, was a bad mistake. Don't do that, and I'll show you later why. Hiya, welcome back to my channel. It's Wendy here from Toonpish Crafts, and I hope you're doing okay. Today I'm going to be having a go with some more glass bead pebble type things, little tiny pieces. I'm going to be putting them in one of Let's Resin's moulds. They make some 3D moulds. They make a frog, I think they make a lizard, and they also make a snail. And they've sent me the snail to try, and I'm so excited to try this out. I love 3D moulds from resin. And I thought I'd try incorporate the glass beads and maybe do a couple of others as well. Yeah, probably will. You know me, I can't stop once I've started. So let's have a look how I got on with this snail mould. So these are the glass pieces. I got them from Amazon. Now they were very dusty and I have cleaned them off, although I probably think they could have done with a wash, to be honest with you. The snail mould has 2 tentacle holes and I'm filling those 2 up with clear resin to start with. Now in hindsight this was a little bit of a mistake. However, my theory was right but my execution of the theory was wrong, but we'll come to that later. This snail mould is really big. It takes 99 fluid ounces, which is a deep pour really. So I've poured some resin in the bottom of the snail shell part and I'm going to fill it up with these glass chunks. Now I had actually measured this shell part with the glass so I know how much glass needs to go in there. Obviously when you put resin in there it's going to increase the volume, but hopefully I have the right amount of glass pieces sorted for this project. So every time I put some glass in, I put a bit more resin in and I make sure I get as much air out as possible, and then it does go into my pressure pot. You don't have to put it in a pressure pot, but I have a pressure pot so I use it as often as I can. So 24 hours later and I get out my metal leaf size glue. I use this a lot. It's amazing stuff. You put it on where you want it, 45 minutes later it's completely crystal clear. It is tacky so you can put embellishments onto it and then you can cover it in resin and all your embellishments will stay exactly where you put them. Now the thicker you put this glue on, the longer it takes to cure. It's best off just having a thin layer. With these stones, there's a lot of places this glue could get buried in. So I did wait 45 minutes, but I should have waited a bit longer really. I also put 2 little dots of glue on the antenna. This, in hindsight, was a bad mistake. Don't do that, and I'll show you later why. So I waited the 45 minutes, which should have really been a bit longer. And I'm using some Let's Resin chameleon flakes in violet. And what I plan to do is to cover the glued areas, but not the rest of the mould. So I'm just doing this gently with a paintbrush. Now flakes are extremely static and they will fly everywhere, but you can always clean up afterwards with some tape. The plan for this was that the glass would then show the colour through it. That was the plan. Everything I use in this video will be linked in the description box below. I do have a 10% discount code for Let's Resin and I will put that on the screen. As this shell on the mould is at an angle, part of it hadn't filled up with resin. Now I didn't know that. I didn't know it was an angle and it wasn't filled up with resin. So really I should have covered that part in these flakes as well. Didn't think about that. I was only going for the glass. So if I had covered that with the flakes as well, it would have all matched in. Or I could have filled it with resin and glass at an angle. And I decided to put some flakes where the tentacle bit is. That's where I put the glue, so I'm putting the flakes on the glue. This didn't work out too well. Again, hindsight is such a wonderful thing, isn't it? It wasn't until I'd poured the whole bottom that I lay in bed thinking, what? This ain't gonna work. But totally oblivious at the time to my error, I then cleaned up the mould and got another mica powder out. And this time I'm going to use a Let's Resin Chameleon powder champagne. Absolutely stunning. I love this colour. And I really don't know because it's not my shades, but it is gorgeous. And I'm going to cover the rest of the mould. And of course I covered the bit I didn't really want to cover. And it was really difficult to film this because my hand kept getting in the way as well. But once it was all done, I got out the Vista black pigment. It's my go-to black pigment to go into the resin. Beautiful silky black and spot on black as well. Absolutely beautiful colour. And I fill up the mould. Now black is the best colour to put behind any chameleon pigment or chameleon powder, as it pushes the colour out. It's hard to explain why, but it really does work that way. And trying to get out any bubbles that I can from the stones with a micro brush, even though this will be going into my pressure pot. If I don't find those hidden bubbles, they will still be there, even if they're smaller. I completely fill it to the top and pop it into my pressure pot to cure. So this is actually about 3 days later. I left it to cure longer because I knew by this point that I might have a little bit of a problem with the tentacles. I've got a bowl of soapy water and the mould is submerged into the soapy water. This should help me demould. It doesn't stop what I inevitably thought it wouldn't stop, but I thought it was worth a try. Getting the snail out of the mould was actually quite easy. I'm making a meal of it because I want to get the tentacles. I don't even know if there are tentacles. The eyes. I think they're eyes on the snail, aren't they? I wanted to get them out in one piece, but I knew they wouldn't. I knew that was going to happen. There you go. The glue had formed a barrier between the two lots of resin, so they weren't actually attached. So then I had to get them out of the mould separately, which was a little tricky, but a squeeze from the underneath and they came out. And think about what I needed to do. And as you can see here, you can see the glue has created a separate barrier between the two different resins. So I had to glue them on. They were perfectly formed in the right shape. So I just used some quick set glue and glued them on. No harm done really, except they should have been attached in the first place. So after this very eventful making of the snail, I decided to make a second one, and I'll run through that one really quickly with you. Now when I was a kid I used to watch Magic Roundabout and I did like Brian, and this one reminds me of Brian. But having researched Brian's colours today, it's only partly Brian. But he did have a bright red shell. Now you may have seen recently my video on the holographic coasters where I used the foils in the coasters, and that red is just stunning. So I thought I'm going to have to put this red foil in the shell for Brian. I will link that video in the top right hand corner if you haven't seen it. These foils are stunning. Once I've coated the complete inside of the shell, every bit of that shell, then I need to clean up. And the easiest way to clean up this foil is with tape. So you just roll a bit of tape around your fingers and just keep dabbing at the foil until it's all gone where you don't want it. I did actually leave a few speckles on it because I thought it would add something to it. Then I thought I'll have some Let's Resin mica powder that is silver blue and completely cover the rest of the mould with this colour, including the little eye sockets. So I had to get the powder down into the eye sockets. That was a little bit tricky, but you just kept whizzing it around and banging it upside down until I was happy that they were covered. look, you can see that they are covered, and that red just looks so amazing through the bottom of the mould. Then I just covered the rest. I figured that the speckles of red would look like freckles kind of through the blue, and I wanted to see how that would come out actually. Now I'm using Diction resin for this. It's not a deep pour resin, but it does pour quite deep. And I'm using again the Vista Black, but I'm also going to use some Vista White as well. And I'm going to do a bit of a combination. I'm pouring first some white resin into the eye sockets. Now I'm just making sure that there's no bubbles in there. I'm squeezing them from underneath to make sure they are completely full before I pour black into the shell. Now I really want black in the shell because of the red, but I really want white with the blue. So I decided to do both. I'm not going to do 2 pours with this, I'm going to do 1. And I'm just going to mix the white and the black a little around his body, his belly, and hopefully it'll do what I want it to. And off it goes to the pressure pot. So the following day it's time to demould. And this time I'm using isopropyl alcohol to demould it instead of a bowl of water. For me it's a lot less messy. I don't think there's going to be any problem with the eyes or tentacles, whatever it is they are, this time. But cured resin can be quite sharp and I always end up cutting myself one way or another, so I'm trying to be careful with that. And you do get a fair amount of squishy noises, don't you, when you do moulding? I was expecting a bit more of a pop there, but oh well. But he came out absolutely beautiful. Now apparently Brian's body is more cream than blue, but I'm still calling him Brian. I love the red shell, and I even like the fact that he's got a dark tail, because the black does change the colour. But I love it, absolutely love it. And I love the fact that his little head is raised from the floor as well. They are both so cute, even though I had issues with the first one, which was nobody's fault but my own. I love them both. I think the mould is amazing. It is gorgeous. It's big. It's a good sized 3D mould. And yeah, I absolutely love them. Because of the glass beads, it didn't reflect the chameleon flakes as much as I'd wanted either. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this one and maybe even got something out of it or some inspiration or something. Next week I will be doing the 10,000 subscriber giveaway, so come back and see me next week. Have a great week, happy crafting, and bye for now.